Okay, Chris, thank you for taking your time out today to appear on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. What time is it where you are?
Right now it is 10:52 a.m. So I know it's the evening where you are right now. So
Well, it's mid-afternoon really, but winter makes it look like it's the evening.
yeah.
Hence why I'm like it looks like I'm sat in the dark. Our lounge has this light fixture where there are 5 bulbs, and the 2 that are on this side of the room are much darker right now. So that's fun.
Yeah, I mean my office is in our basement. So like I have no natural light. So like I have all these lamps around me. I haven't gotten one of those like seasonal depression lamps yet, but I'm thinking of maybe getting one of those so I could do some light box therapy on my face when I'm when I'm down here. Cause
Yeah,
yeah,
I would understand why that would be needed. I'm now like using my phone to spotlight onto me.
there you go.
It's like, look at that. Now that looks weird, doesn't it?
Now.
Does it look any better? There you go.
It does. I could see your face, your facial expressions. You're not as ominous.
Look at that.
There's a light within the room now.
Look at that. And who are you, Chris? What do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a coach. I've been doing this now for almost 11 years, which is kind of weird to think about. Um, but the way I like to think of myself is I'm a dad. I am a husband. I am like a caffeine like fiend. Like I love all those things. But I tend to work with a lot of parents working on just making changes within their life that fit within their life.
Yeah.
So usually there's some component of weight management within that combined with some sort of training combined with general like health promoting behaviors. Um, because in reality, like anyone I start coaching with, we don't look at calories. All everyone does is keep like a food log. I call it a food and feeling log. Um, because we really dive into like the emotions that are coming up when they're doing whatever they're doing
Hmm.
and look at, I'm sure you've had them on the show and you talk about, look at like the eating skills portion of things and the level of behaviors that are within that. Because for most people, they'll see the results they want with these like health promoting skills and guidelines versus me being all right, let's suddenly enter a deficit. Right. I think that everyone could benefit regardless of what they're practicing from first starting with setting these health promoting behaviors before they even look at the other stuff and diving deeper on the emotional component that's coming up with all those other decisions that they're making. That's why
Hmm.
for like it could be 30 days, it could be 90 days. It depends on the person I'm working with and where they are in their life. But after 30 days, if they've got this food and feeling thing down and they're able to actually detail everything and they're able to recognize they're hungry and they're eating on a schedule and they're drinking water and they're hitting their step count and they're doing all of those things, then maybe we would implement like, okay, here's a range that maybe you could be within. Here's a protein goal that you can try and hit. And the only reason I go that route is because it's like, okay, one, I do have clients who are vegan and vegetarian. So it's hard for them sometimes because even if we go the health promoting behavior route, in general, they're eating enough fiber and things where they're good, but they're usually really low on their protein intake. And that then leads to them doing a bunch of snacking. So it's more of
Yeah.
like, it's a tool. It's a tool to be like, this is what's actually happening.
Hmm.
And when they can see it that way, then it's like, oh, okay, I really should try to implement X or Y. And I don't in general have folks look at like carbs and fat. Like I don't do that. That's too much. Like I don't deal with physique competitors. I would never want to do that. So I just look at like the bare minimum of things, and that's how people can make a ton of progress.
Mm.
It doesn't need to be this obsessive thing, and macros and it's a tool. Like it's not for everyone. That shouldn't be the only tool that you have in your toolbox when you're working with clients. It should be there should be weight neutral practices, and there should also be like intentional weight loss practices, like because you run the spectrum of who you work with. It's just not fair to say everyone has to fit into one box. It doesn't work that way. I hope that
No.
answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. I think too often people go straight for, as you said, going for the deficit and MyFitnessPal and macros and all the rest of it, and that's not their fault. There's just a lot of literature around that, and when I say literature, I mean as in like there's loads of like blogs and content around that now, as opposed to, you know, there's evidence, but not as much. And the thing is that the people think that, okay, I want to work on my health and fitness, so they instantly think weight loss, deficit, tracking calories. Whereas I liked what your approach was about a food and feelings journal is more about the awareness of your current eating habits and how they align with how you're feeling, like maybe emotionally or physically, and having that comparison of those things side by side for a long period of time, because that's very much awareness and approach based coaching, rather than thinking, oh, I want to get fitter, therefore I have to track my food and be in a deficit, because that's very avoid based, I think, and it's very restriction based. It's very much like deficit is restriction implied. You know, tracking can be a very arduous task for many people, whereas actually if you log your food, that doesn't necessarily need to be a disordered eating behavior. It doesn't need to be on a mobile phone. And when you do that with pen and paper and bring a mindfulness to your eating habits, that makes you very much more aware of what you're doing, and then you can start to make changes in a healthy way rather than in a way that's very restrictive and forced by a external outcome.
Yeah, I mean, those are all such valid points. And I mean, you know what's interesting about it too is like, even let's say this person, this hypothetical person I'm working with, has no history of disordered eating, has a pretty healthy relationship with food, um, and is ready to, let's say, start tracking their like calories and protein. When I do that stuff with people, they're always surprised at how big the number is. Like they're always like, "That's so much food," and
Oh, their
I'm like,
calories, you mean, their overall.
"Yeah," because a lot of people I've worked with have like used like they've done Noom, or they've done like they download MyFitnessPal and then it like sets the calories for them and it's like 1,100 calories, and you know it just that's not realistic. Like it's just not. It's never going to be. It's never going to feel good.
No.
It's just not there. Like there's no reason that you can't enjoy the food that you like. It's just
Mhm.
literally having that level of awareness. I just put a post out. It's like you could still eat all the snacks that you love and still manage your weight, because if you can
Mhm.
uncover why you're choosing what you're choosing and actively make the choice, that's very different than mindlessly eating. Like, and
Mhm.
it's not even mindless when you're doing it. It's actually there's something else going on in your mind that you're trying to avoid usually, or you're bored. But you're more complicated than being just bored. If you were bored, you could go do whatever you wanted to do, and suddenly you wouldn't be bored any longer. You know, so it's this multi-layered thing that I just find very fascinating when I'm working with people.
Yeah, definitely. You know, with regards to the number being higher than people think, I think that's a key part of anybody's consistency to their overall food approach, be they tracking food or not, is the idea of actually you probably need more food than you think you need. And people's inconsistency with their eating habits comes from that under eating for so long and restriction based removal of snacks that then it just leads into binge city, right? That's why people talk about themselves as all or nothing people, because they view eating healthily as eating very low calorie foods all the time without snacking, and actually that's just leading them to be incredibly hungry. As you said as well, you can't just simply put all eating decisions down to being bored. There's a big emotional spectrum that requires education and awareness again to know how you're really feeling, because there are going to be times where having the food is the right thing for you to do as self-care, but as you said, the intention behind the decision is more important than the decision itself, because that will merit any morality. There should never be morality around food, but people usually feel more guilty if it's
Mhm.
something that they do unintentionally or feel backed into.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's this level of it's the concept of like if we look at values for what's important to someone,
Mm,
you could have the same situation, but it's slightly different. So if I give the example of, I'll use me as an example just because this has happened, you know, me coming home late at night and not having anything made and just wanting to eat like pizza, and we have a bunch of pizza, but also having like frozen vegetables that I can easily throw in the microwave to have with it. Like my value of being concerned with my family and my own wellness comes into play there, because I'm diabetic. So for me, I know if I eat the fibrous thing with the other thing, I'm more likely to get full. So I don't overconsume all the pizza, because that's what
Yeah, yeah.
happens, because you eat it fast. It's delicious. There's no fiber there to really help you slow it down a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when I'm with one time I was with my son, and he loves pancakes. So I made pancakes and he ate these pancakes and we were eating pancakes. Then my father-in-law showed up with a pizza, and my son really wanted pizza. So he had pancakes and pizza, and I had pancakes and pizza too. And it's because family's important to me. And that was a special moment, something funny, something that we're always going to be able to, I'm always going to look back on and be like, oh man, that was so funny when you were little, when you were this age, and we just sat eating pancakes and pizza and listening to like ESPN. Like it was just like this special thing.
Yeah.
The same value, it just comes into play, right? The other value I have is being adventurous. That's adventurous. And family's also in play there. So then clearly it's an alignment for what's important to me. I didn't feel guilty after doing that. I didn't feel bad about myself. I was like, no, this is like a one-time special moment. I'm going to be there. I'm going to enjoy it. Right.
Yeah, I get that. I think, giving some real life examples into what values people have and how they make decisions is good, because I've talked to clients who value more flexibility or freedom, for example. And then so it's saying, well, if your values are flexibility, then why are you trying to eat the same foods all of the time? Because actually that's not what you value, and you value the freedom to make your own decisions. And that's why, I work a lot more with internal based cues than external based cues, because it's about helping people uncover their own, hunger, fullness. But what you mentioned about, yeah, I'm going to have pizza, but I'm also going to make vegetables. It's not like those things are mutually exclusive decisions. It's like I'll have vegetables with my pizza because I'm wanting to have more vegetables. Maybe I've not eaten a lot of vegetables this day or this week, and I'm aware that the fiber in those will help me with my digestion, particularly as someone who's diabetic and wants to handle my blood sugars more. It's more of a health-based decision than a diet culture decision of like, you must eat vegetables at every meal. So again, it's like, it's the perception of how you view these different decisions, I think, is really key. It's why I work a lot with my clients about the mental stories that they're telling themselves about food and fitness and their food decisions. Because if it feels restrictive, it's going to be restrictive. If it feels diet culture like, it's going to be diet culture like, but it's also the intention as to why you're making that decision. That's always massively important.
Yeah, there's a lot of intention, and I think people don't realize that they have that story or that thing playing in the background, in the back of their head, saying like, you can't do that. It's like the person who like, if I talk to someone, like there was one time where I was guest coaching in a group, and people were basically, it was like a nutrition Q&A. People are asking me questions. And I was like, they were like, what are some example of like things I can drink while I'm trying to lose weight? And I was like, you can drink whatever you want while you're trying to lose weight. Like, water's a great option, but you have to look at the good, better, best scale of things. It's like, I can't just tell someone who's drinking like 12 Cokes a day to just throw all their soda out and drink water. That's not going to work. That's not realistic. That's not right. That's not enjoyable. But you can like be like, hey, I know you have like 12 Cokes a day. Let's work on having 11 a day. And they're like, what? I don't know. It's like, it's one less than you were having before. You could still have the thing. And they're like, oh, okay. And then it goes like, okay, you do that for a while. You get it down to maybe it's like 3 or 4 a day. And then it's like, okay, cool. What if you have like Diet Coke? And they're like, what? Isn't that bad for you? And I was like, you were drinking like 12 regular sodas. So what's it matter if you have 3 or 4 that are diet? They just happen to be 0 calorie. You didn't really have to change much else within your nutrition. And suddenly you've eliminated this huge chunk of calories for you. And the pushback I got from people in the group is like, well, isn't like 0 sugar stuff like bad for you? Doesn't that hurt you? And I was like, there's no research supporting that. You're okay. It's fine. Like if you enjoy that and like it's something you want to have and it helps you like not be consuming like, you know, hundreds of grams of sugar in a day, like that's a great choice. And then as they get comfortable with that, they move to like maybe sparkling water with like something like Spindrift. Maybe they move to water with lime or lemon in it. Maybe then they just have water, you know, and they're making that choice because they know they can have a soda whenever they want a soda, you know, versus being like, oh, this is so bad, I can't do this ever, right? There's this, but it takes time. That's
Mm.
not like that's not like something you'll reach in 90 days. That's like 365 days. You
Mm.
know, it's not this short little thing.
No, it's a long term switch with small changes first up. And as you said, it's not about like never ever having a soda ever. But as you mentioned, if your only fluid is coffee and then you move to soda, it's probably, going to be beneficial for your cells to have some, actual water, even if that's water with added squash or juice or whatever
Yeah.
whatever you all call it across the pond.
Oh yeah.
But I'm talking about like just like the syrupy stuff that you just add to water to make it a bit more tasty.
Oh yeah.
But you know, it's interesting when we discuss things being sort of like quote unquote good or quote unquote bad, because it's not like the soda diet or otherwise is bad. It's just, as you mentioned, the full sugar soda will come with it with a lot of added sugar that could potentially be avoided, and therefore cut down on excess sugar consumption. And diet soda, it's better than no fluid, but of course it's not water. Like it can have a net hydrating effect, but of course then it could also have an excess urinary effect because of the caffeine within it, and then maybe your hydration is going south. And we're going maybe a bit too advanced here, but
No.
it's interesting when people are like, we have these fears of what might be good or bad, but actually it's interesting to communicate that to someone and have them make these small changes over time. With regards to what I found working with parents in particular, that's much more difficult, I think, is the routine of things, right? Because you mentioned at the very beginning, like, let's look at some food habits, let's look at what you're eating and when, and look at like a routine of eating. And I think what parents really struggle with kids in particular is just how crazy life can get, right? If you've got young kids and they're eating at whatever times or sleeping at certain times, or they've got like extracurricular activities, they've got nursery or they've got school, you're running from one thing to another all of the time. I think the biggest thing parents find is that because they lack maybe a routine for themselves, they struggle to know how to take care of themselves efficiently.
Yeah, I see that all the time in working with parents and with being a parent myself. I think the key skill that most folks could benefit from practicing is just the skill of making time. Like that in and of itself, like I would never sit here and be like, "Oh, we all got 24 hours in a day." No, no. My 24 hours as a parent is going to look different than another parent's 24 hours. But what we all have is like 5 minutes. So it's like whether that be setting yourself up for like what are the easiest things you can make for breakfast ahead of time that you can bring with you on the go that you could just grab out of the fridge. What are the quick lunches that like you can make regardless of like what fires are you need to put out? Like dinner, it's like, okay, maybe we just make a bunch one big serving of something, like whether it be like a turkey chili or like a bunch of burgers, and we just have ample amounts so you could just grab it out of the fridge out of Tupperware. Like it's those little things that I think get overlooked, and it's because we immediately go in our mind, okay, I have to, if I use this example, it's like, okay, I know like I'm lacking in protein, and I just use this one because everyone does. I know I'm lacking in protein. So what's the best kind of protein? What should I be eating? How much should I get? Like, it's like, no, you have to just sit down with pen and paper and write a shopping list and make sure you put some protein based things on it. And
Yeah.
then the next step is going to the store and making sure you have those things in the house. Like
Mm.
if we go from that to that, those are the steps that people miss out on, and they major in the minor. They get lost in the minutia of everything, and they feel like there's no way this is going to work. Like, I can't do this. I got to throw everything away. I'm going to do like Nutrisystem. It's just easier. And it's like, no. Just let's make it less overwhelming for you and look at what works within your life. Like you don't have to fit your life into what you're doing. What you're doing has to fit into your life. That's why no one should get the same plan. Like, no one should have the same. There are certain principles and certain skills that everyone can benefit from, but the order at which they're applied to your life is going to be different. If I'm dealing with someone who is a former collegiate athlete, their progress that they make in the gym is going to be different than someone who's never worked out in their life, has always been skinny all their life, but just never had to worry about what they eat. Like, it's going to be very different. Someone's clearly going to have more muscle recruitment happening faster than the other person, right? So it's the same can be applied to your nutrition. Like, someone who's been aware of these things before might have a different advantage. Someone who's younger might have a different advantage. Someone who has more time, maybe they only have one kid versus someone having like 3 kids versus someone who's like a first responder versus someone who's a school teacher. It's like, it can't be a one size fit all thing. It's just silly. It's so silly.
No, I get you. And I think, as you mentioned, it's not about throwing the baby out of the bathwater and getting overwhelmed and being like, right, I'm just going to get Nutrisystem or some other like meal plan service. It's just like, no, let's make time to look at the foods that you want to be having more of. Like, like, how can we include more protein and more fruits and vegetables and more of these foods within your life, and how can we get those into a shopping list and make that time to then, what quick meals are we preparing? How do we make this simpler and faster, particularly if you're short on time, so that you can still, prepare your own foods and also enjoy your own foods, as opposed to having to get those foods made by other people and shipped in, which is just never satisfying.
No. And I mean, even like if we go the plan ahead route, I had this conversation with a client the other day because she was traveling, and she had put on her food and feelings log. She wrote that she got like a quesadilla. What'd she get? Like some sort of quesadilla wrap thing from Taco Bell, and she had like put a sad face that she was upset about. And I was like, why are you upset about that? Like, she's like, well, I thought I made a bad choice. I was like, you didn't make a bad choice. You were traveling, and that's what was available to you. And then I was like, and if you really want to think about like making different choices when you're going out to eat, because it happens all the time. Like, that's the thing this person is dealing with right now. Like, they always do drive-through there. So it's very easy to overconsume and not realize that. And that's something they actually want to work on. So I was like, okay, well, let's plan ahead. And they didn't know what that meant. I was like, all right, let's pull up all the fast food restaurant menus that you actually enjoy. And she was like, oh, they have that like online? And I was like, yeah, let's actually game plan a couple scenarios and see what you could pick. And I was like, here's this thing that they have at Taco Bell that has like 60 grams of protein if you just get double chicken on it. And maybe you opt to have like the guac on the side, and maybe the sour cream. They have like a low fat sour cream, because I know you like sour cream, but you also know they dollop it on like it's going out of style. So you can make these small tweaks, and suddenly like it's not as many calories. You're still having the thing you actually love having, and you're going to be full longer and not need to eat 3 bags of kettle corn on the road. You're going to actually still be full. So she was like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know you could do that. And I was like, yeah, we could just plan ahead. You could do it for any situation. And it's not telling you that you can't go where you want to go or get what you want to get. It's just like, how can we add to what you enjoy? The game of addition is really important for nutrition. Most folks think it's just subtraction, but if you're consistently subtracting, then there's really nothing left.
No,
and that doesn't work.
No, and subtracting is more of the restrictive mindset anyway, and that's more of what will lead eventually to overeating and rebelling against what you're trying to achieve. And the thing about planning ahead, again, it's like there's a difference between having some scenarios in your head that you feel happy about versus looking ahead at a menu and choosing the lowest calorie thing, or feeling like that's the only option you're allowed to have. Like, I really want to make that clear on this show, because with someone like myself who's much more intuitive eating aligned nowadays, there is a big component of honoring your body's satisfaction as well as your hunger. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a plethora of options available to you, particularly if you travel and eat out a lot and you're someone who is wanting to be more conscious about your, as you said, like maybe you're more conscious about your protein because you're exercising more, or you're more conscious about your food choices in general because of eating out more. There's nothing wrong with having a plethora of options because you've game planned a little bit, but then also giving yourself permission, if you really are in the moment, to just choose what you want. If that's something different, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with being educated about the ability to have sauces on the side, or getting extra protein, or getting extra veggies as an option if you would want to, because that's just educating yourself about how those foods keep you fuller for longer. If you're going to be on the road for a long period of time without access to food, and you're going to feel, guilty about other decisions, it's just about having options. It's not saying you have to choose the lowest calorie of the menu by looking ahead. No, it's just about educating yourself on what's available and giving yourself permission based on what's available. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, that's usually like the point I'm coming at with most of this stuff is like, if someone's life is like 6 days a week they're getting takeout, like they're getting like fast food drive-through stuff, if one of those meals just happens to have more protein in it, and it helps you so that you don't eat all of those snacks in between too, then it's going to help you just feel a little bit better regardless. Like it's just this level of like, okay, I have an option. I can choose now. I think that's the empowering thing. It's like, I'm well informed and I can make a decision. Like, I know a Big Mac's going to be really tasty right now. That's what I want. Versus being like, oh, I had no choice. I got like a triple quarter pounder. I feel horrible. Like, it's like, no, you make the choice. You know what's there for you. And I think that's what's usually missing for people.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because it's that whole point of just because you're traveling and then there's fast food versions available, it's like there's a difference between intentionally choosing something at McDonald's that you really want to have and then having it and stopping when you feel full, versus, because I'm traveling, I'm only going to be able to have bad options, and because I'm having a bad option, I'm therefore going to go completely overboard with that option and get a really massive burger and a really big portion of fries, and get a milkshake and a McFlurry if the machine is working, which it never is. And of course, then you just end up feeling bloated, horrible, and very unsatisfied. And that's not the goal.
I think that's why this happens so often, is because even if we remove it from being like a traveling situation, it becomes like this act of not defiance, but being like, ooh, I'm not supposed to have this, so I'm gonna go hard when I have this. Versus, at no point do I tell any of my clients that they can't have a specific food. Like, that's silly. Like, you can include whatever you want to include, and whether that be a weight loss goal for someone, whether that be a weight neutral goal for someone, like, include all the foods. Like, that's the thing. It's not saying you can't have those things. What it's saying is exactly what you're saying. It's like, if I can recognize that I'm getting full and put it down, that's very different than inhaling it and being like, oh my God, I need another one because I'll never get this opportunity. That's just not true. It's not true. Especially with Uber Eats. Like, you can get that whenever you want now. Like, it's just, that's not true. So it's working through that phase of it. It's like, if we can demystify it, if we can look at the menu and empower you to be like, there's so many choices that you could make, like, then it's like, oh, okay. Like, all right, this suddenly isn't like off limits, because that's what people do. Like, I never eat fast food. It's so bad for you. No, eat it. It's a convenient thing. And for certain people I work with, like, within where they live and within their financial budget, it's like fast food might be the option that they can afford that day. That's what it is. So why in God's name would I tell someone you have to avoid the thing that you can afford?
Yeah.
Like, why would I say that? That's just not fair. That's like telling people they have to eat organic. It's BS. You don't have to do that. That just makes you feel better about yourself. You don't have to do that. I don't.
No.
I don't. So it's like,
there's no research to support it's healthier in any way, and that's why there's quite a big discussion online about the clean eating paradigm and how it's actually very privileged and semi oppressive, really, because as you said there, I'm very big on telling my clients about convenience foods and fast food options and budget friendly ways to eat more nutritiously, because at the end of the day, okay, a burger and fries, it's still meat, it's still carbohydrates, it's still all of these nutrients that your body breaks down and uses as both fuel and substance to survive. And things like frozen produce and canned produce and tinned produce and ready produce that's cheaper is still broken down into these food groups and still can and should be used as someone's nutrition.
Yeah. I think it's like the same concept. Like I've done content on this. I've talked about this ad nauseum. The concept of like a good calorie versus bad calorie. It's so silly. Like a calorie is a calorie. A calorie I get from carrots is the same calorie that I would get from an Oreo. It's a unit of measurement. That's all it is. They're not good. They're not bad. They just are. And like, even if you're not tracking them, it's just, that's reality of what's in all the food that we eat. That's how we have energy to go do stuff. Like, to be alive, you need to eat. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. You made a point about the food being on or off limits as well, and I think that's the biggest factor towards that permission. I think that's what people get wrong about unconditional permission to eat. It's not the idea of that you're eating all of the foods all of the time. It's just that these foods aren't ever going away for you. You don't need to have two Big Macs because tomorrow you're back to eating healthy. You don't need to cheat on your diet and gorge yourself on pizza because it's not going to be available the next day. You have the permission to have these foods, and then when you have that permission, now it comes to like, well, what do you really want on the menu? What's going to feel good? What's going to help you honor your values and your goals right now? And then that's when you get to the decision of like, oh cool, yeah, I'm going to have like half a pizza with my significant other because I'm going to enjoy that amount and I'm going to be satisfied and full. I'm not going to be bloated and sick and hate myself for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, I think that that's a big thing, especially with parents. As a parent, a lot of the things that happen, if we are talking someone who, let's say they did want to lose weight, a lot of the thing that happen, even if they don't want to, is you end up eating like your kid's food because it looks better than what you're eating usually. Like, for
Right.
some reason, like, it's like you could plate this really fancy meal that you're deeming to be clean or healthy, and you're giving your kid like delicious like Goodles, which are like these awesome mac and cheese company we just found. They're so good. But you're giving them that and you're eating this other thing, and what they have looks so good to you. So then you eat your meal and then you eat the rest of their food, when in reality, like, the way we do it in our house is our son eats exactly what we're eating.
Right.
Like, there's no special. If he wants something with his food, like, he loves fruit, it's at every meal because it's the thing he asks for. If, during the holidays, we did like pastries with his meals. We did like chocolate with his meals because it demystifies it. It's not this special, it's not this special thing. And like, he'll ask for specific things now. Like, he just, and the rad thing is like, if you give the kid a cupcake, he takes a couple of bites, he knows when he's full, and that's it. Versus saying you can never eat that, then he grows up and he's just eating that all the time. They have a whole section of it in the intuitive eating book. It's like they talk about that with like kids, and it's like, we're not even intentionally teaching them any of this stuff. It's just like, this is the stuff that I do with clients. Why not give my son the ability to actually like enjoy this and have a healthy relationship with food?
Yeah.
Like, let's all undo the things that we've been programmed to do. He doesn't have to clean his plate. He doesn't have to, he doesn't have to eat the one green thing to leave the table. No, we just put it there. If he doesn't eat it, cool, we'll put it on his plate later. Like, that's, if he wants a snack, we put the same dinner out that he was just eating. Like, that's what it is. It's not,
That's a really cool point that you just said there. If he wants a snack, we just put out the same food that we just had before. It's like there's no snack food versus lunch food versus whatever.
Wow. No.
It's the food, and you having the same meals, I think, is really cool, because it's like, you're not giving your kid this like convenience or processed food, and then having to eat clean yourself. You just realize that food is food, and you'll just enjoy it all together. Like if you want goodles or if you want chicken nuggets, like have chicken nuggets, for God's sake. Like your body's going to be able to process these and formulate energy and nutrition from it. And serving savories and sweets at the same time, as you said, it's within the intuitive eating book of like, if you serve these foods at the same time, you will pick a varying amount of these things because you trust your body. And it's so interesting and fascinating to watch how kids are around food before they learn all of these rules about like timing. And it's like there's no kid out there that's fucking intermittent fasting. No kid out there that's like, hold on, mum, I'm waiting until 12 p.m. because
Yeah,
my
no.
eating window is between 12 and 4, and I'm doing
Uh-uh.
the warrior diet for a six pack for the beach this summer. It's like, you're fucking 3.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just so funny. This actually happened yesterday. I was with my son, and we were grocery shopping, and to get him to actually sit in the grocery cart, we usually have to give him a piece of fruit. Like he likes to pick it, and for whatever reason, the store was out of like all these things. So we eventually got him a banana. He inhaled it in like 2 seconds, and then we got to the car, and he asked for another snack. But the thing was, like, before we even went into the store, he had like a string cheese. He had an entire apple. Like he's eaten. He's not. I already knew. I was like, you're not actually hungry. But I also I turned around and recognized that he had thrown all his books. He got rid of his toy car. We had been in the car for a while. I was like, oh, this kid is bored. That's what he
Yeah,
is. Whenever he gets bored, whenever he gets upset, whenever something doesn't go his way, the first thing that he says is either one of our names, like mom or dad, or snack. That's what he does. He's already associating it with, like, if I have a snack when I'm upset, we'll watch a movie. Like that's what he thinks about. So now it's like, yesterday I just gave him a roll of stickers. I gave him stickers, and then he did not bring up snacking again until we got to lunchtime. And then he ate all of his lunch. He ate it all, and then we played some more. That's what everyone needs. Maybe more stickers in their life, but more along the lines of like, you're not always freaking hungry.
yeah.
You're just not used to coping in any other way. And if it, like, there are some people who are like, if you're never hungry, like chances are you're not in, like, if we talk deficits or whatever, you're not in a deficit. And it's like, no, that's not it. If you are identifying all hunger as the same, it's kind of silly, because 1 is hunger, 2 is a craving.
Mm-hmm.
Cravings are normal. You don't always have to act on them, though. And I think that's what that's why I start with the food and feelings thing, because suddenly it's like, okay, I was speaking with someone last night, and they were talking about, like, they were teaching a group of students, these younger kids, none of them listened to them. She felt, and she was like, I was just frustrated. So then on my break, I went and I ate like a whole sleeve of like chocolates. And I was like, okay, you're saying you're frustrated. Can we talk a little bit more? Like what was actually happening? And as she opened up and was able to talk more about it, I was like, oh, okay. So you felt a little guilty that your students weren't listening to you. You felt a little inadequate, or that you didn't know what you were doing. Like, that's very different than being frustrated. You have
Mm-hmm.
so many feelings there, like Brene Brown style. You have so many things going on there. And it's like, oh yeah. And I was like, well, what would you do if that happened and you weren't at school? And they were like, oh, I'd probably like walk away from my kids if they were frustrating me, or I would go clean, or I would listen to something or turn on the TV. And I was like, okay, well, you can't do that at work, but could you go for like a 5-minute walk when you feel that way? And she's like, oh, I guess I could. And it's like, yeah, it's like, totally. Chocolate is wonderful, and I encourage it, actually. For most people, I do.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, if eating the whole tin is how you deal with those feelings, it kind of defeats the purpose, right? It kind of gets away from what you're actually working towards. So it's like, go take the 5-minute walk and work towards this level of radical acceptance. If we can get to a level of radical acceptance, then the emotional eating, the stress eating, whatever you want to call it, becomes less frequent, because it's, you can accept that the feelings come and go. You can accept that you can ride the wave. You can accept, like, the monsters get off and on the bus. Like, you can do all of those things, and it's hard to get there. So it's like, yeah, 50% you'll get it right, 50% you'll get it wrong. You learn something each time. So that's why the logging is so helpful for people, to play detective and figure it out.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, the ability to notice and name the emotions that you're actually going through is a skill. And also, as you said, not having to honor every craving. Like, sometimes the craving will be there because it is about the food and you wanting to have that food and taste the food and enjoy the food. And that's cool. Like, you have permission to honor that if that's what you truly want. But it's also about knowing if the craving is there because of an emotion, or, as you said, like boredom with you, as you see in your kid, or that client story about being, guilty, frustrated, angered, annoyed, like this whole concoction of emotions that goes in, that just results into eating to feel satisfied. Totally resonate with that. And that, as you said, it's just the awareness then of, like, if you don't have an awareness of what's making you make certain eating decisions, you're not going to be able to change them. Like, you have to be able to have that awareness, and that goes beyond just like plugging it into my fitness pal and going, oh shit, like I'm over my calories for the day. It's like that just doesn't change any behavior.
It really doesn't. And, like, what's interesting is, like, even if I do have someone track, like, let's say I have someone do that, they're still doing the food and feelings thing with that. So
Right.
that's the interesting part. It's like, because that other skill is ingrained, they will still do that, but they will also note, like, how hungry they were before the meal, how they felt during the meal, how they felt after the meal, what was happening. It's like, so every day they're doing a check-in with themselves, layered on top of, like, this other tool that's just letting them have a little more detail. So it's like even if you go over or whatever, and you can point out and be like, oh, okay, well, it was my son's birthday and I wanted a slice of cake. I wanted to enjoy that with my family. Cool. Versus, I had a rough meeting at work and I took half the cake out of the fridge and just ate it to numb how I was feeling. Two different situations, but if you didn't write down what was happening, you probably would have been like, cake is just so bad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm addicted to sugar. And it's like, no, you're not. But we're not that, I don't even want to say intuitive. We're just not used to moving through those feelings and giving ourselves the time to do that. I think as a parent, you feel like it's kind of selfish to give yourself time to work through yourself. And I see that a lot, and I felt it before too. So
yeah, man. I mean, I'm glad you brought that point up, because that is definitely something that goes on, and people get it from their own parents as well. That kind of like putting themselves last and feeling guilty for taking time out for themselves or doing things that are beneficial for them. And also, you and I have shared a few laughs and jokes on this podcast about sugar addiction or feeling bad for eating cake or eating windows and all the rest of it. And we don't do this to belittle people listening. We do it because we've been there. We do it because that's how we felt. And what I'd remind everyone listening to this is, like, if you've had messages from your parents about cleaning your plate or having that veg before dessert, and those are your beliefs, like, so did we. So that's not your fault. And not being able to understand and sit through your emotions and relate that to your eating habits has never been taught to you. So it's not your fault that you don't know how to do that, because nobody does until they learn these things. Like, as you mentioned, Brene Brown, like, reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart was eye-opening to me in terms of what different emotions actually, mean. And because I've read Feelings Wheels and I've done all of that jazz, but, like, listening to the research around emotions and feelings and understanding, like, the real granularity of the difference between them was really important to that journey. And yeah, like, going back to something you said earlier on this podcast of, like, you might not have the same 24 hours as someone else, but you have 5 minutes, and making time to be a bit more proactive about your own self-care is vital. It's like you do need to make time for that, because then you're going to be the better parent for your child, and you're going to, you take care of yourself to be able to take care of them better. Like, I love how you've made content about that. That's the way, like, I'm going to ask you about how you make time for activity, because that's a big one, making time for exercise. But I love how you're like, I lift weights so that I can lift my son and play with my son and carry him around, as well as also carry the shopping and things like that. And I think that's just such a positive attitude towards movement. It's not like I'm doing this for a sick pair of abs. It's like I'm doing this so that I can be a better parent.
Yeah. Yeah. And we go through phases of like why we do what we do. And most of the people who come to me, they'll say that they'll say they want to be able to keep up with their kids, but they're just like, I don't like the way my clothes fit right now, or I just got winded going up the stairs, or I just want to do something for myself. And at no point would I ever tell someone that what they want to do is wrong for them. Like, it's what seems to be important for them at the moment. What we will do, though, is talk about like what it means for what they want. And as they work on their values and we dive deeper, they're like, usually the thing that they shout out is like the thing of like, I was able to grab my son before he fell down the stairs, or I was able to go on a hike with my family and I have not done that before, or I was able to do, and suddenly it becomes clear to them, oh, wait a minute, this extends beyond me hitting a PR. This is more for those other things in my life. And when it comes to making time for it, when I'm working with clients, if I'm working with clients, it's literally looking at their schedule and being like, what realistically do you have every week? Not like what's perfect, what is realistic? And for a lot of people, it's 2 times a week, 30 minutes. Other people, it's like 1 day a week, 20 minutes. It's like, cool, let's work on hitting that consistently every single week. And then after a couple weeks, we'll add another day, because I'm sure you'll find another 20 minutes. Like that's the art of meeting someone where they're at. Pardon my French, but forget the research out there about what's optimal, because that's done on people in a lab. I'm not working with someone who's trying to like grow their lats, so they have to do like pull arounds with a specific tempo. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not. And honestly, like, if that's your goal, great. But I really just want someone to be able to pick up their kid, or pick up even like a family pet that's older, without like straining themselves. And so making time for that becomes a little bit easier once I lower the bar for people and say, what is it? I mean, I had a client the other day. I've been programming for them for like 2 months now, and they only made it to the gym like twice. And I was like, hey, why don't we just pause like working out? Why don't we just focus on hitting steps and like going for walks? And they were like, really? And I was like, yes, really. That seems like where you are right now. So let's focus on nailing like 6,500 steps. And they were like, oh, okay. And it's not because steps are like, there's a magical number. It's more of like, no, you're just moving your body. And that as a benefit, yes, it can help with weight maintenance, but it also benefits your mental well-being. It also benefits your ability to be creative. So if you're stagnant with work and things, like, there's so many benefits to it. And as a bonus, it does reduce your all-cause mortality. So it's like, why not do it? But it's like, that can totally be where you are right now. And when that gets easier, you're more likely to be like, all right, let's add a workout, because you have this, you're adding marbles to wind jar. Like, you're just doing that over time,
Yeah. And as you said, man, don't ever worry about your French, by the way, because I'm practically fluent in French from my time on Duolingo. No, but also, if you're not comfortable with swearing, I apologize for my swearing previously on the show. But
I just don't like being a dick. So I want to make sure first.
Yeah. That's fine. Like, obviously, as I've mentioned before to people, we're not having a go at you at all. And with regards to, starting with where you're at and then adding things, it's so important. We're not conducting research papers, and that's what people need to remember. Like, we're not trying to find you the optimal training split to grow exactly 2 centimeters across your biceps in just 8 weeks. It's like, we're giving you health and fitness programs that you can stick with, that lower your lower your risk of all-cause mortality and make you live longer, but also give you a more functional life. Right, you've got better posture, you've got better grip strength, you've got better energy levels, you've got more gas in the tank in order to play with your kids and play with your pets. And yeah, you're not going to injure your back by picking up your dog or you're shopping. And something is always better than nothing, right? Like I was talking to a client the other day who was struggling to get in the gym because of his workload being busier. And, we talked about putting his rear foot onto the edge of his bed and doing a set of split squats, 10 reps on each leg, and then getting down and doing 10 push-ups. And he's like, I thought about that and I just didn't do it because I just thought, well, what's the point? And I was like, well, what's better, 10 split squats on each leg or nothing? And he's like, well, 10 split squats on each leg. I was like, well, there you go. It's what the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg really changed my life around, like really simple tasks after other tasks. Okay, like every time I go to the bathroom, I can do 10 push-ups. Like every time I put the kettle on, I can do 10 lunges. Like I don't need to. And I don't. I use Tiny Habits to do more organization, like more tidying up of things or like wiping down of surfaces, because that's just where I'm at with my life. But that's how we can apply things to these things, and these things multiplied by themselves as soon as you start being consistent. I also said to a client the other day, because she was struggling with walking because of the weather and the temperature and the light. And I said, if you had a dog, I was like, would you walk that dog if it was raining? And they were like, yeah, 100%. And I was like, well, why would you walk your dog if it was raining? Well, because my dog needs exercise and it's my dog's favorite part of the day. I'm like, so why aren't you doing that for yourself? Because you also need exercise. Like you also, I'm not saying that to judge anyone that doesn't walk right now or doesn't exercise. No. I'm not trying to impose that upon you at all, but our bodies feel better when we move. Like we are meant for movement, and that's not about forcing your body into a different shape or doing steps for fat loss. It's about moving your body for health. Like you get outside into the fresh air and you improve your physical and mental health, you lower your stress, you lower your anxiety, and you'll perform better at work that day, and you'll be more present for the people that love you. And so just like you do that for your pet, it's like you do that for yourself.
Yeah. It's so big because like, let's say I had someone who was living in an area that wasn't safe to walk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I lived in the city, there was when I was in college, I lived in a neighborhood where it wasn't safe for me to walk around. So I wouldn't tell someone to go do that.
No.
But what someone can do, it's just like if you don't have the ability to go to a gym, you could do body weight workouts at home. You could do whatever you want. And be this maybe my musical theater background, be it that I'm married to a choreographer, there is absolutely no reason that a 20-minute dance party can't count towards that movement. I think people miss that. Yeah. And like, for a while in my programming, what I would do is I would have like a recovery day and I would have like, you could bike, you could do a yoga thing, you could swim at the Y, or you could just use this playlist. And I had a playlist and people would just click on it and dance for 20 minutes to one of these songs. And people like loved it and they didn't realize what they were doing is like, if you looked at your step count at the end of that, you're probably hitting like 8,000 steps without going outside.
Without even leaving the house. Yeah.
And you can get your family involved. You can get your kids involved. You can do all these things. Like my son does like somersaults and stuff now because he hangs out while I do those things. Like he asks to do those things. So it's like your kids monkey see, monkey do. Like that's the thing. And they don't mind when it's fun.
I love that.
That's the thing,
I love that, Chris. Yeah, I really do, because I'm a big advocate of that as well, right? Like we talked about that same thing of exercise indoors and dancing or just doing exercise inside, especially if it's not safe for you to walk. Like that's a really great way to bring that place in. But just movement that you enjoy and how that still counts. Like when I work with parents, movement with the kids is key. Like if that's a bike ride or a walk or a play session, it all counts. And having knowledge that it counts is also helpful to your health benefits. You know, there was a study done on hotel workers who clean beds, and half of the group were told about the benefits of step count and physical activity, and were given pedometers to track them on their like day of work, and the other group weren't told about that at all. And the group's like subjective wellness and physical wellness improved because they were aware that they were moving even though they were at work. Like they would feel guilty because they weren't exercising, but actually they were doing that at work. And so it's like it's really important to translate that to your kids and your activity. And I think when you model exercise for your kids in a way that's fun and enjoyable, like even lifting weights for me, like I find really enjoyable, and strength training I find enjoyable. Like I want to model that for my kids. It's not about diet culture and forcing them to change their body, but it's just exercise for fun. Oh, I'm going to cough.
Yeah.
Oh man,
you good?
I've got a bad cold, and for some reason, speaking
man.
at the same time has made it much worse. I'm getting a really tickly cough.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
No, I agree with you. I mean, for my son, I just wanted to be a part of his life, because for me, you know, I got into fitness stuff because I had to. Like it was required for a part that I was playing, and the thing that I found with it though, and the reason why I liked it, one was because finally, like I looked like not like a wet like mole rat in a t-shirt. But the other part of it was because the mental clarity I got and the space I gave for myself. You know, it's kind of why I got into trail running, because it's just your mind, you can be with your thoughts and exist with them. Again, radical acceptance. Like you can do that. That's one method. And being aware of your body in and of itself, like, is really just valuable. So I want my son to be able to have that, just a way to express himself, a way to do that, whether it be dance, whether it be gymnastics, whether it be lifting weights, whatever he wants to do. I want to support him with that. But if it's something he can do, you know, with my wife and I, and we can make it a family affair, like, I think that would be so cool. You know, I think it would be something special. So I don't know. We'll see. He's only 2.5, so we have a lot of time.
Yeah. No, I like that. Well, Chris, you know, I think this has been really valuable conversation. I've really enjoyed it myself, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Where can people find more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so if folks, I'm most active. I'm pretty much on every platform, but I'm most active on Instagram at coach.chrismcmahon. You can check out my website, chris-mcmahon.com, or you could just literally Google my name and type in like meal prep, and that article, like a bunch of my articles, will just pop up. So like you could go that route too.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll put that in. And last question: how do you drink your coffee?
Oh, well, I drink my espresso, which I don't know if folks can see, black, just straight up black. If I don't do any milk art like you do, because every time I do, it looks like a wiener.
Well,
Every time. But if I'm being fancy and I want to treat myself, I'll do a long black, which is, I don't know if they're popular. I know they're popular in Australia.
yeah.
Yeah, right. I like that more than I like an Americano.
Yeah.
Because I get some of the crema on top, and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll help people out here and just say like long black is basically a double espresso with a bit of water, but not as much as an Americano, which then takes the taste away from the coffee.
Oh yeah.
And you do get long blacks in the UK, but only in proper coffee shops.
Yeah. And I
So you
mean,
need to know the places to go to.
and the other difference is like the hot water goes first, and then they do the espresso into the hot water versus they pour
That's
right,
always the way that you should make coffee. Like I have to tell people at Costa or Starbucks to do that, because and that's how I make my coffee at home. Like I've got a home barista machine, so it's double espresso. It's, you know, it's the hot water and then the double espresso on top.
Yeah.
That I drink a long black, so that's how.
Yeah. Yeah, I
how I
think
thought
for
of
me,
mine.
it's more like having the patience to boil the the water first is why I don't do it as often.
Well, that's why I love this machine, man. You know, like the water comes out of the machine and it's at the temperature
Oh,
you want it for coffee, so it's below
mm,
boiling,
yeah.
and
See,
and
that's pretty rad.
it makes it great. You know, if I'm making a Lemsip, which is a type of cold and flu medicine that we have over here, where you make it with boiling water, because the water is off the boil, I can
Mm.
use that for my Lemsip, stir in a bit of honey, and I can drink it straight away. I'm not burning my mouth off. So there you go.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So I await the podcast sponsorship from Sage Barista. If you want the best coffee places in the UK, then let me know because I know of them all. And
Yes.
yeah, thanks, Chris, for coming on. It was a great chat.
Yeah, I appreciate it.